fine. Again, what's interesting is, that transition between, what I've heard called general exercise, which I'm still not quite sure what that means. Probably means more like traditional exercise.
Yeah.
Names of exercises with pre-constructed ways of doing them, placed in some order, versus, this kind of configurational, there's no name for this. I'm going to lay you on your stomach and put your hip and joint in this orientation and apply a torque in this direction.
Yeah.
And
you can't sell that, Greg.
Yeah, there's no name for it. I don't know what to tell you. So it's just a configuration that we're going to perturb and see if you can control yourself from here. I don't know what else to say, right?
You're going to have to shorten it down to an abbreviation, then you can sell it.
That's what it is, right? How to do a proper push-up, right? People love that one, right? So, I used to teach a course where we would really kind of try to blow that whole idea up. And I'd say, okay, I'd take half the class and I'd say, okay, I want you guys to do a push-up. And so they would all lay down or get on their hands and knees, and they do a push-up. In the other class, I'd say, okay, you watch these people do push-ups. Okay. And then switch. And I say, okay, everybody did a push-up. Did everybody do it the same? No. So what's a push-up? Right. See, how should a push-up be done? We just saw 20 different ways a push-up could be done. Is one wrong? Is one right? What are we talking about here, right? And so this is the real challenge for the exercise science field, is coming up with more scientific, clear definitions of these things. And I think trying to get away from the notion that an exercise named with a pre-constructed idea of how to do it is only like the rough sketch of the concept. It's not the specific thing. It's got to be much vaguer, starting from that vague idea, and then trying to figure out, okay, how do I manipulate this situation towards something more precise, versus starting with it as, no, this is this precise thing that you have to do this way. And then I'm going to force wherever you are, however far away I think you are from that, I'm going to move you towards that. Versus saying, well, how do you do the general idea of it now, the way you interpret it, and then how do I want to manipulate it, if at all, towards something else for some specific purpose?
Yeah.
That's a totally different concept, right? So that's our challenge, because people love names, and I understand it. Naming things makes the world make sense.
Yeah, it's easier to remember, relate to.
Can't get away from it, right? We could almost look at it like from a taxonomy perspective, where push-up is a general category of configuration that has multiple subspecies associated with it, right? Like you have feline, like, it's a whole, kingdom, right? Genus and species, right? You have the kingdom of push-up. Okay. Well, what's all the crazy subtitled things that can fall underneath that idea? Versus thinking of the push-up as, a specific subspecies that has to be done. So it's a tough.
Interesting. I used to do, in the gym, used to do a warm-up of 27 different, I call it the 27 push-up warm-up. And it was like you had 3 hand positions, i.e. in, neutral, and then out. And then like your close grip, a shoulder width grip or wide stance, and then forwards and backwards. And so just manipulating the planes of motions. And then you say to each other, that's just like that's a fraction of all the different push-ups that you can do.
Absolutely.
27. Like, what? You can do that many push-ups? Yep. Yep. Just got to change one little bit about it.
Well, that's interesting because that's kind of what I heard the researchers talking about on the podcast you sent. Right? Is they have the general category of pain. Okay, now what do we do? How many different versions of pain are there? Right? How many different subspecies of pain are there? And they're saying a lot, and we're not really sure how the system even constructs them.
Yeah.
Except in the specific case of I stab you in your leg with a knife, and you say your leg hurts, and point to where the knife damaged the tissue, and we know.
Yeah.
Okay. Other than that, not totally sure.
Yeah.
Now I thought it was interesting using the thermal compare contrast idea, and that providing a temperature change to the area that you suspect or that the person's reporting a location of pain to see if it's peripheral sensitized. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, the sunburn idea.
Yeah, right. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Or if it's nociceptive.
Yeah, so that could be, I don't know, helpful or not. I guess it would help you decide. Let's just leave that alone. let you heal, or we need to start manipulating that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, how do we get across this idea of control as demonstrated by response to perturbation using the motor side of the system, the sensory motor side, to see if we can alter information in a way for those circumstances that aren't so clear cut as the knife in your leg thing, right? Like, how would we explain or describe the sensations you were reporting in your hamstring, in your leg area, or in your back, right? Is it pain? It's pain. Okay. So I don't know. I just don't think they've got that part figured out yet.
No, I don't think they have.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, from what I'm reading in the literature, it's a bloody minefield. Which what partly frustrates me about my coach is that he seems, again, I don't understand exactly, and only get short snippets, but it seems like he thinks he knows what pain is and how to treat it. I'm not sure you do. I'm not saying that I do at all, but I'm not sure you do either. Just because of the information out there is just so convoluted, not convoluted, complicated. It's just scratching the surface.
Well, that's the real interesting problem. That's the interesting problem, right? To say I know what your pain is, right? When you yourself don't know what the pain is, but I know because I have some authority over and some kind of unique understanding about your personal somatic experience that you don't have or that you can't have. I don't know, man. That's a pretty radical idea, right? Because no one can know my pain except for me.
Yeah.
So there's no way for you to even know. How could you possibly know? You couldn't possibly know. All you do is, like, what we're doing essentially is instituting a systematic kind of a priori informed trial and error process. So let's start seeing what's happening here. And
which was why it was a little bit confusing when he recommended the rolling pin on my leg.
Oh, wow.
No, how can you have that level of knowledge around pain, or supposed knowledge around pain, and not recognize that, like, especially pretty recently, that this conclusion has come to, that massage, and in the research anyway, and foam rollers just doesn't do what it's claiming to do, especially in the long term. In the short term, yeah, there's pain relief aspects to it, but that doesn't add up to one long term or decrease. And even in that podcast, they talk a little bit about that. I'm trying to remember exactly what they said. I can't remember exactly what they said about it, but it was very much as a short-term thing that they're trying to suggest that has a long-term effect, when again it doesn't. Again, which was, yeah. And I've said to him, I've been down that route in the past. Like when I was 18, I had like shin pain from high volume. Well, I would suggest from high volume running, because that's what I was doing a lot of. And I was rolling and I was mashing it and smashing it at 18. And the only thing that left me was a slight decrease in pain in the short term, but a shit ton of bruises on my leg. Just, yeah. I thought, I'm not going down that route again. No chance.
No, well, there you go, right? You probably generated nociceptive. You damaged the materials. You damaged capillaries, right? You actually damaged and that alters the information and changes the sensation, and so it's a tough problem. And so
it'd be interesting to find out the answer to those two questions you sent me from him. Like, what does he think is actually happening when that happens? He recommended, what was it called? Like, dynamic traction, like where you like lift the skin as well.
Yeah.
Again, I can't remember what it's called. Again, it's the same ideology.
Yeah, materialism, right? The fabric paradigm. We need to manipulate your materials, right? And that's what's gonna change you, right? Yeah, I know that's a hot one, right? This new kind of this fascial stimulation idea. They put a strong suction cup, like cupping. Now there's a machine that they developed in Europe. I know a PT here in the States that's using it, and they put it on and they draw up the tissue, and I guess they think they're tractioning or putting a tensile load on it, stretching it. And
it's that ancient or the Chinese medicine cupping, isn't it? Like the drawing the toxins out.
Yeah, that, or I had a client who's an anesthesiologist tell me that's what he thought was happening, was the cupping was drawing out the inflammation inside his shoulder joint. I was just like, what?
Drawing it out to where?
I don't know.
Did it come out in the cup?
I don't know. It's so bizarre. It's just a bizarre thing. Or it took it out of the joint and put it into the lymphatic system, so the lymph system could get rid of it through the kidneys. I don't know. I don't know. It was a very strange concept to me.
Do you think there's a strong psychological belief system involved within this materialism ideology?
Yes, yeah.
That they like really believe happening, like you would, like someone would believe in God or believe in whatever. They don't know it's there, but they believe in it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's I think it's captured in the notion of prospect theory and judgments and decision making, and which is in section 15 of your manual. Let me see if I can find it and read it to you real quick. Where prospect theory is describing, again, how each of us makes decisions or judgments and evaluates risk based on our current understanding or belief systems and what we're told. And so let me see if I can find where that is in here. Systematicity. Prospect theory. There it is. Okay, got it. And so in prospect theory, it's talking about how people evaluate potential losses and gains, almost like a lottery. And it tries to predict the direction of irrationality. And so you have in their model this 4-box system of looking at risk aversion or risk seeking decision making based on whether or not a significant gain or a significant loss will be incurred once the decision is executed. And so you have the risk averse person who underweighs potential benefit because they're afraid of being disappointed. And these folks, feel comfortable with their health and refuse to quit smoking or drinking or whatever it is. And they even refuse proven screening procedures because they don't want to be disappointed. They don't see the benefit at all. But you also have a risk-averse person who overweighs potential harm, and they're afraid of a large loss. And they'll often pursue unwarranted or useless tests or whatever to quell their fears. So there's a juxtaposed notion of risk aversion, and then you have risk-seeking behaviors where people underweigh potential harm. And they're so desperate to recoup their losses or get back what they lost, they'll seek dangerous pseudoscience when they are experiencing a diagnosis or a condition they don't like, and they feel that such a significant loss of their health and well-being will be so devastating that they'll do anything, even if the chances are slim to none. They'll do it.
Kind of clutching at straws at that point.
Oh, absolutely. And then you have risk seekers who overweigh potential benefits. They're hoping for a much bigger gain than's possible. And they take all kinds of crazy supplements, right? And homeopathic potions and Reiki therapy and cupping and all these things on kind of a whim that they'll have some kind of dramatic benefit, even if they are aware that it's a low likelihood of success. So it's an interesting theory in terms of how economic agents frame the outcomes of their transactions in their mind.
Yeah, it's a very, I think for coaches out there, there's like so much confusion that people just have no idea how to inform their decisions anymore and their choices.
Yeah, they become highly associated in their bias, or they create these representative schemas, right? These are these fallacies in decision making, right?
And this is kind of what
that's what your coach did. Oh, you have shin pain, you must have shin splints, and the way to treat shin splints is pulverize the material.
Yeah.
So that's probably what he gives everybody that comes and says, I have sensations on the anterior compartment of my legs. What should I do? Pulverize them with compression, right? So
get a hammer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like, okay, let's not think about this and collect some samples and try to figure out what's going on. Let's just initiate, the most high risk thing possible, potential damage to your materials to fix the thing, right?
That idea, like extrapolating that out a bit and I suppose making it a bit more obvious to people. I said, I explained this out to my girlfriend. She's like, I don't know what you mean. I was like, okay, I don't know if this is right or not. Imagine you're getting stabbed in the leg and you take the knife out and put it down the side. You need to do something about that wound. So go and grab a hammer and start hitting it. That's kind of the same thinking in my, like, it just, when you put it that way, it just doesn't make any. It's like, no, of course I wouldn't. I don't want to do any more damage to the leg. You've already been stabbed. And yeah, so it's what it seems to me to be is that, again, from my coach, probably me as well. And I'm hearing it more and more now. What's that? I can't remember what the phenomena is where, like, someone shows you a red car and all of a sudden you see red cars everywhere. Can't think what that's called. Anyway, it's I'm seeing it everyone, and there's so much. Someone will say, the mentorship I did, for instance, we don't like foam rolling, but we recommend stretching. Like, there's so much confusion and misalignment that I'm seeing in a lot at the moment, and I think it's because, like you said, people are subscribing to one thing or the other, as opposed to stepping back. And I'm guessing this is probably the process that you've been through, is stepping back and going, okay, well, why don't I just have a look at it from an even bigger bird's eye view and make good decisions about the best choices?
Yes, that's exactly, I just said, hold on, I got to get back to traditional natural science. I don't know. I can't see everything. I recognize my own incompetency as an observer, the limitations to my own competencies and observation, but that I can make some observations. I should start recording those and making them, and using that a priori, a posteriori give and take, right? That the objective and the subjective, the quantitative and the qualitative, and come up with a reasonable, or at least a rationed, reasonable conclusion about why I'm deciding to do what I'm doing, given the uncertainty of it and the limitations to the information that I have, so that at least I can defend what I'm saying beyond just, I don't know, that's what always works. Right?
And is this why, like, you go, like, if there's essentially contraindications to any type of treatment approach that you would use, that say, okay, you go down the route and for some reason it leads you to massage, like, okay, well, that's contraindicated because of the a priori knowledge of what it does to the area and the cells and so on. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to step back, move that out of the way. That's now out of the bucket of options, out of the toolbox. Now I'm going to see where it leads me now. And is that why you kept coming back to exercise?
Yes.
And what? Because exercise is because you can really control the dose to a point, to a minor level, before, I suppose, you need surgery and you need medication.
Yes, and you can use basic physics to interact with the system, and physics is pretty solid footing.
Yeah.
Right. And again, knowing that I can't see hardly anything about what's really going on, but a priori understanding that axiomatically the living human body has potential for self-healing. If you give it the right rest, or you give it the right stimulation, or you remove the stimulation that's caused, that it will actually start to heal itself. It'll change itself, right? And this has been known for thousands of years, right? The body is the ultimate healer. We're just trying to give it the stimulation or remove the stimulations that are interrupting it. Again, looking at it strictly materialistically, saying, oh, you have a cut, now you don't. You're bleeding, now you're not. Okay, right? Your bone is fractured, now it's not, right? Okay. And yes, there are bone stimulators and artifactual and external devices that have been created based on the understanding of how the body heals itself. It's like, oh, this is how it heals itself. Right? Yeah. The basic inflammatory cascade is generally understood. Right? We know there's an inflammatory phase, and that hemostasis and immune response is pretty well understood, and then the proliferative phase of granulation and contraction, epithelialization, and then remodeling and callage restructuring and scar tissue formation. All these things, these are known. The question is, is there something that's limiting them? Is there something we can do to help the system do that? Okay, sometimes there is. But as an exercise professional, what can I do? I can create stimulating situations and conditions so that internal mechanism of has a chance to potentially occur. So does it work for everything? No, it doesn't. And I wouldn't expect it to. Right? What's tough for the consumer who's trying to look for pain relief is if you're improving their motor control by the way we're defining that, helping them to own their movement and control their body better, but their pain's not going away, to still find value in that. Pretty tough. Pretty tough.
Yeah, especially if they came in
for pain.
For pain relief, yeah.
If they're not getting it, they're leaving. So
let's say that person does stay. What would you do in that? Let's say they're like, yeah, I can see the benefits of it, but the pain isn't going. Would you then, like, my thinking is, okay, let's go to a doctor and let's get a deeper.
Absolutely.
Look and start using some of these.
We need help. Yeah, we need help. Yeah. Yep, I need someone better trained than me and that can access different, observational tools, right? Ultrasound, MRI, CT scans.
Start rolling some things out.
Yeah, and start just taking more samples, right, and getting more information. That's really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Unless exercise is contraindicated or actually exacerbating them, you should keep doing it. Because again, what do we know a priori? Stimulating the Arnold Schultz's law, right? Living physiological cells and materials need regular stimulation, or they don't do so good. It's just that the hormesis, the dose response thing, right? Yeah. There needs to be almost a cyclical nature to the stimulus response dose.
Because I mentioned kind of that idea to my coach a while ago about everything seemingly being set up to help us move, and
that's what it looks like.
And he said, like, I can't remember exactly what he said, but I'm pretty sure he was disagreeing with that. And I'm like, but why then are we here? Why are we doing what we're doing? Why don't we just lay down all day?
And what's the problem? A body that just lays all day, what happens to it?
Yeah, it stops working.
It degrades. You get bed sores, right? Your muscles atrophy. You start dying when you just become purely sedentary, right? So yeah, this is what I don't understand. This is the lack of a deep, well-informed body view.
But I think the more and more I think about it, more courses should start with that idea. I think because who's to say which is right, but just knowing your body view and just knowing your worldview before you start to learn about this is going to save you so much time and help you make better decisions.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've started to put a lot of this type of material, into weekend one and just saying, okay, students, you got to read these documents because everything I'm about to dump on you, whether you agree with my body view or not, I just got to tell you what it is, because everything you're about to experience is informed from this philosophical construct. So, build your own, do what you got to do to understand your own. You just have to understand that everything I'm talking about emanates from this.
Yeah. I think it's a it's partly a problem due to the entrance level into the fitness industry. Like, there doesn't need to be a level, which exacerbate this problem. But it's not even just the uneducated fitness industry. Like, there's educated people out there, like PhDs and doctors for years and years and years, that are perpetuating body view that isn't correlating with what the research is actually saying.
That's very strange. I mean, I've asked physicians, my physician clients, I said, did you have a philosophy of body class or a philosophy of science class in school? They did not. This is the anatomy. These are the diseases we know about. Here's how you treat them.
No.
That's pretty much it, right? It's pretty much it. I was like, wow.
Yeah. It's ironic. They're probably thinking, oh, that's another class that we need to teach. They're already in med school for 8 years anyway before they can start. Let's cut that. Let's not think about that. But it makes me think about a technique for reading textbooks. I don't know if you probably have come across this, but you first start by literally just opening the pages, just through the text, one by one, just looking at them, not reading them, not just getting a general idea. And then you go back to the start and you go and read the titles of the page, the bits in bold. And then you go back to the start, and then you go to the paragraphs, or you go to the end of the chapters in the textbook, and then look at the questions that they usually ask in the textbook, because that's what the author deems as necessary that you need to know. And then you go to the relevant area, and on each paragraph you read the first sentence and the last sentence, because the first sentence introduces it, the last sentence summarizes it. You don't need to read the bit in the middle most of the time. And then you do that through all the relevant pieces that you need to know based off the questions. And then once you've done that, you can start reading the paragraphs of the textbook if you need to. And what the theory is that because you're doing that from start to finish, like 7 phases, I think it is you're repeating, you're seeing those patterns, because that's what language is you're just seeing patterns of images put together, and you recognize that as a word over and over and over again. So you're repeating the process of learning it as opposed to just reading it front to back. By the time you've got to the middle, you've already forgotten the start. And,
I agree with you. I don't know if that's part of Bloom's taxonomies or not, but I know that they've been looking at this pedagogically for a long time and understanding it. Some of it's part of the hermeneutical process, right, of reading and rereading and reading and rereading and re-understanding to gain what we would call understanding. Because I know this is a huge problem in schools, and there are some of the what they call the smartest students, the ones who can read the book and take the test, have no deep understanding about the material at all.
Yeah.
They just know, they've just learned, oh, this is how I memorize things. And when I'm asked questions, I just spit the answer out. But when you actually try to get beyond that unidimensional approach and say, well, let's put together these ideas and start thinking, right, which is a creative act, they can't do it. It's like the guy I studied with in engineering school. He had a photographic memory. Wow. And he aced every exam. I mean, it was unbelievable, right? And I said, I got to study with this guy, right? Well, when we got out to the practical part, working in the nuclear power plant, he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
He couldn't do it. I was amazed. So they just put him back in the classroom as an instructor, right? So, you just spit the material out, right? But he couldn't actually operate the plant, right? So it's like, wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
Because it required functioning in a 3D environment, right? Thinking about multiple things happening simultaneously, right? He couldn't do it.
Isn't there an element of autism with that as well?
There might be. There could have been. He was an unusual cat. That's for sure, man. Yeah, didn't have very good social skills. That's for sure. And there were several. Looking back on it now, because back then I didn't know what those things were. There were several students, I'm sure, in my class you know, that were, you know, autistic at some level or had some savantness, because we had some guys that, I mean, he would be mad when the instructor would make recommendations about other ways he could do the calculations. He'd be angry about that.
Yeah.
He'd be like, I did it right. Why are you writing on my paper? just give me an A. Don't write anything on my paper. Like, he couldn't take it. You know, I was like, wow, that's weird, dude. That's a weird thing, man. So very strange, the human mind. So what is learning? What is understanding? What is thinking?
Yeah.
What does it mean to think?
Yeah. I think the idea of that textbook type thing is, again, going back to the med school and whatnot, is it seems like a longer process, but actually it will save you time in the long run. It's a short-term approach. Again, I think that's just human nature. We're designed for short-term, or to think short-term, because hundreds of thousands of years ago or whatever, that was what we were thinking. We weren't thinking about, oh, I need to buy a house in 20 years. You're thinking, where's the next bear that I can kill to eat? I've got to feed my family.
Yeah. Where can I sleep tonight? Yeah. Where can I sleep?
Exactly.
I mean, what's interesting is we started to think that way. You know, we started to project out into the future at some point, but it's teaching thinking really is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
How do you think? So in fact, I'm going to realign. I've got Bernadette working on my Instagram, and I'm going to put a whole section there on thinking, thriving. We're to talk about these things. We're talking about now prospect theory, utility theory, rational empiricism, you know, biocycles. So what are these things?
Yeah.
Are they helping you think, or are they actually making you even more biased?
Yeah.
Shoving you into some biased groove.
I think one of the books, a guy called I think it's David Malcolm Gladwell or David Epstein or something, who's just released, called Range. He talks a little bit. It's basically about how a lot of the scientific problems in the world over the past 10 years that people haven't been able to solve. So one of the examples they gave was NASA had a problem that I think it was 26 years they couldn't solve it, just could not solve it. And then someone put this website up for these big companies to put these problems on. You know, if you can't solve it, put it on this website and we'll find someone that does. And basically all they were doing was, it was just an open forum. Anyone could look at it and anyone could try and solve these problems for a financial reward. And the guy that solved this problem was I think he was like a law student that just dabbled in engineering in his spare time. But his thinking was something about law because of the areas. It was in aeronautical law or something like that. And he read a case study where they had a similar problem. And he's like, well, that could fix the result of that case study could fix that problem. But if he hadn't known about law, he wouldn't have been able to think about it. So the ideas that range, again, the cure for malaria, the person who discovered that, or the vaccination, was not working in malaria. They did no research in it, but they went down this path that kind of led them to this discovery. And now they've saved millions of lives. And it's kind of that thinking. And one of the things he talks about is having where people keep thinking that we need one or the other. Again, it's that same bias, but just at a bigger scale. You need specialists and you need generalists at the same time. And you need people that can think in both ways. But obviously, that is extremely hard to do. And I don't think we're on this earth for long enough to be a specialist and a generalist. Be able to accumulate that level of knowledge. So
tough. I love it. Yeah, I agree. That happens all the time. I think all the time, but at some frequency where somebody who's not stuck in the mud of what the current thinking is comes in and says, well, I don't think that way at all. Have you thought about this? No, it's not allowed. right? And the specialists attack that person. I mean, they attack them academically.
Yeah.
I've seen that before. You know,
Connecting.
I have a PhD in this. What do you mean? You figured it out. That's impossible. It was like, then they have to eat some crow later. Like, oh yeah, they figured it out. So,
Connected knowledge or something like that it's called,
right,
isn't it?
that's systematicity, right? Yeah, the idea of connected knowledge. So, yeah, that's why I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to create in the muscle system specialist. It's an open forum discussion. What's your ideas? Come in. Let's hear them. As crazy as they might sound, let's hear them. But you know, does intuition sometimes work? It does. There's no doubt. What is intuition? I don't know. I mean, I'm going to put out some stuff on critical thinking and modern rational empiricism now. That has to acknowledge, yes, a human could just be in a dead sleep and wake up and have an idea, right? And when you ask them where'd that idea come from, they say I came into a dream, or I'm not really sure, but this is the idea. And it's like, all right, we got to acknowledge that. Now, I think Abelson's laws, the statistician, psychologist, researcher there, when he talks about no free hunches, after decades of statistical research, he's acknowledging, okay, you can have a hunch, but it's not free. It needs to be challenged still, right? You still need to investigate your hunches, your intuitions. But we're going to acknowledge that, yes, there's something about the human brain that has these subconscious, unconscious processes that just might actually, you know, spit out something quite useful or an answer to a question people have had without any clear provenance, some linear progression of a rationalized reason, syllogistic type argument about why we got to that point. I mean, it's preferable, right? But it doesn't always happen. So yeah, look for that. I'm going to start putting videos out on some of these topics, right? Thinking.
Have you spoken, like, have you done any speaking with people, you random example, like Lorimer Moseley, or the experts that have some sway in fitness?
I have not. I just, we don't run around in the same circles. I mean, you know, I put a couple of things out and sent my body view and philosophy summary statement to, you know, Lars Avamarie or Ben Cormack or some of these guys on the Facebook pain post biopsych, but they haven't responded.
Yeah.
They never really say anything about it. Well, one of them said it's too long, it's too much to read.
Yes.
Like, well, I don't know.
You can't summarize this into a paragraph. I wish we could.
Like, I don't know what to tell you.
That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah,
like, people want it summarized into this nice, neat box, and it's just not.
It's not.
That's what I want. I'd love for you to just go, yeah, cool. This is, like, put a nice little flow chart together or something, and it's a bit. This is all you have to do. Like, cool, done.
No more thinking. No more thinking. Just do this.
30 plus years of experience and learning and failing and reading is what we need. and maybe if you get 1,000 people all doing that, and like, for instance, when I get to 50, 60 years old and had that level of had 40 or 50 years of reading and experience with neuro research and whatnot, then we can then tighten it up and maybe in 200 years' time pull it into a nice neat box and call it a hit.
That could be it, right? Yeah. I mean, you know, that's the pros and cons of peer review. Peer review keeps it in the same bias, you know, narrow thinking. We might need more non-peer review, right? Let me give my stuff to an architect. What do you think? You read it. What do you see? Give my stuff to somebody who's a chemist and say, read my stuff. What do you think?
That's the idea of that.
Yeah.
That's what range is.
Yeah.
And but that might be that might be something to go down. But again, the majority of people won't accept that, will they? They won't accept that like your work has to be studied by a group of experts in your field. Well, not necessarily. It has to be studied by intelligent people, I would say. And experts from every field need to review this stuff.
Yeah.
You should start a journal, the non-peer-reviewed journal.
Non-peer-reviewed, the Journal of Non-Peer Review.
Yeah.
Then we'd see all the peer-reviewed people get mad. That's impossible. That's a crazy idea.
Exactly. Exactly, and that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah,
they're so biased in their own little box. Like no one's allowed into it unless we allow you to.
Nobody can come in.
I don't think that's the case.
All right, my client's coming in.
Yeah, cool. No worries. I appreciate that, bud.
All right, we'll see you.
See ya.